Welcome back. We'll be doing some Batgirls, but first, just talking about Nightwing. So I didn't do 101 last month, so I'll just talk about 101 and 102. With 101, my gosh, the publisher synopses are just so wrong. But basically, Teen Titans, there's Lord Neuron. He wants Black Blockbuster's daughter's soul. And all I have to say about this is listen to Batgirl Oracle episode 117, guest starring Shag, where we talk about Underworld Unleashed because it seems to be circling around to that. And then also Nightwing 102, Dick gets knocked out by a smiling man, and Dick is left in a morgue, and the smiling man pretends to be Dick, and that man goes after Olivia and the Titans, and then they all fight him, and we find out about the smiling man. I will say that it is funny how, because Barbara just appears really in a couple panels. Because he's in the freezer, and or he had just left the freezer, I think it was, and then calls her and asks, I think, where Olivia is and where the Titans are. But anyways, Barbara snuggles that dog at night as if it were a cat. I don't know that dogs do. It seemed more cat behavior than dog behavior to be snuggled that way. But anyways, I just love that she's snuggling that pet. They're basically joint child. Okay, so we are doing Batgirls number 16. If we look at this cover here, we have a hat, and you can just see a glimpse of the Mad Hatter's face behind that. Falling out of the hat are some tea paraphernalia, as well as Cass and Steph in their Batgirls outfit, got some playing cards, got the staffs that the playing cards would use, and then Mad Hatter spills the tea. I wonder, I guess I'd still use that phraseology, but I remember when that was huge, like pre-COVID, maybe it was 2019 was when the tea was rather big. But anyways, here we go. So Batgirls number 16, everyone's mad here. Story Becky Cloonan and Michael W. Conrad, art Neil Googe. Finishes pages 16 through 22. We've got Geraldo Borges and colors Rico Renzi. So the letter that Grace O'Halloran received at the end of the previous issue was actually meant for the Batgirls, and the writer was probably hoping that she would read it on air, but that doesn't happen. And there's no explanation for the bloody bust that was also left there, but we'll, I suppose, ignore it. The letter was given to the GCPD, who sat on it for a few weeks before Officer Brooks convinced Montoya to hand it over to the Batgirls. Now, it is an invitation from the Mad Hatter for a tea party for the next full moon. So, boy, it's lucky that this must have been given at the new moon or something, because they sat on it for several weeks. They just have to follow the white rabbit, which seems to be a confusing idea for some, even though it literally means follow the white rabbit. I mean, I was confused because of their confusion. And there's some stencils on throughout the city. Oracle is running ops, and as the Batgirls burst into a warehouse after, again, having followed some White Rabbit stencils, they come to a room filled with Bat Family and adjacent automatons built by Mr. Green, RIP, and there's also a phonograph there, which is speaking to them with Mad Hatter's voice. The phonograph speaks some crazy things, and the automatons attack. After the Batgirls finish them all off and find out from Oracle that the frequency of the speaker is coming from an upper level of that warehouse, they go closer to the phonograph. A drawer opens on the phonograph with a drink me bottle. And Cass tells Steph, because apparently Steph is an imbecile, not to drink the bottle, even though Steph wasn't going to, but she's suddenly gassed with the toxin that comes from the phonograph, and she's turned into a man bat. And I mean, this is some Barbara Gordon as a snake stuff right here. Babs can get an antidote from Bruce, but Cass has to control Steph until that can happen. And as Steph Bat rages out, Cass decides to calm her down by speaking to the relationship and knowledge of each other, and that they no longer are alone because they have each other. And also, according to the purple boxes, we only uncover who we truly are when we fall down a rabbit hole. Mm. So Steph Bat flies upward through the building because, well, she's now calm, Steph Bat, I should say. So she flies upward through the building. She grabs Cass with her dainty toes, her talons, and they find Mad Hatter. Now he's spouting out some madness, and they kind of try to figure out his motivation, but there's really no point. Cass knocks him out after solving a riddle, and on his way to custody, he makes some observations and judgments about Officer Brooks, his time in the military, and its effects. I don't know what the point of that whole thing was, but I suppose we're learning more about Officer Brooks, and maybe it'll circle back around in the next 3 issues. Who even knows? Babs, as Batgirl, is outside the clock tower with a sniper rifle, ready to shoot Steph Bat with an antidote. Yes, it kind of seems like she's about to kill her, but we're not playing Ghost Recon or anything. But Cass, riding atop of her, says that she doesn't need to do that, and Steph Bat just needs some time to let it out. She's not a monster, which, is a statement that Babs begrudgingly agrees to, which, seriously, who was even saying that Steph was a monster? I mean, literally, she is a monstrous looking thing, but it's not like she's going nuts and destroying the city. So they fly around. Cass promises never to leave Steph, and she even stays by her side the whole 12 hours that Steph sleeps once the antidote is administered. And then the end. The end. Okay. So I guess if we just go through it's one of the, I feel like I'm writing less and less on this particular book. I don't know. I have lots of thoughts that are going on, but it's just like it's not transferring to my document. But we'll go through. This is a whole weird setup with the letter, the bus being ignored. Why is the GCPD sitting on this? Why didn't Grace give it or talk to the Batgirls? Because we know that Grace likes them and trusts them and kind of has like a relationship with it. And we know the press sometimes has relationships with different people. I don't know why she went to the GCPD necessarily and didn't just go to the Batgirls. It seems like, was there a fraction of the relationship we didn't see? So that was something that I didn't necessarily understand. I don't know why. It's like an aha moment that Steph has. Follow the white rabbit, of course. What? I don't know. It's like, it's clearly, yeah, don't be late. Follow the white rabbit. Yes, actually, the white rabbit. I don't know. It's like a weird piece that was like unnecessary. And then what is Stephanie like? What is this aha moment that she didn't realize what was actually being said? Literally, you're going to follow the white rabbit. Wasn't like a Matrix situation where Neo is looking at the computer and then that says follow the white rabbit, and then he sees a woman with a tattoo. Was it on her shoulder, I think? And follows that. Donovan made a point of like Stephanie is saying weird things, so maybe it's just another thing because she says at one point, "How's the body cam look? Are you seeing these sick moves?" I don't know. I don't know. The big theme of what I'm about to talk about is kind of the Steph situation, because my gr- biggest grievance here is, oh, and like I said, the adjacent. It's weird to see, why is Red Robin there? Why isn't it some other form of Robin? I feel like that's a bit strange. And who else did I see? Batman. It's interesting that Harley and Ivy are there, but I guess we are considering them. Are they a part of the Bat family now? I think they're like anti-heroes, but I don't know whether they were built as automatons there. This is my biggest grievance, I think. First of all, I like that fight scene. I think they do a good job. There's no point to the drink me business, but oh, Cass didn't tell her. Bab says, whatever you do, don't drink it. And that seems like so obvious to me that if you have to say that to one of your operatives in the field, that operative should not be in the field. Okay. Or is this still like, let's rag on Stephanie? So, I mean, even Stephanie says, yuck, I would never. She's smarter than that. Why would she drink that? Why would that even be a consideration? Why would Babs think that would be a consideration? But then here we go. Stephanie again gets dosed with something. I do not understand what is with the hate, I feel like, or the hang up on Stephanie, and why is it always got to be her? So she's the one that had the issue with whatever that guy was, Spellbinder and the artist guy, like it she's the one who was affected, not Cass. It seems like she makes the the mistakes. She's the one who fails constantly. She's the weak link of the team. And here we go. We've got 4 issues left. Here another thing happens. I don't also don't know, back to that vial, I don't understand what the point of that necessarily was except to make Stephanie seem dumb because I don't even did they bring it back to be analyzed? Because we don't see it again. Um, Mad Hatter is well, I guess we can talk about this first, but Stephanie Brown turning into Steph Bat. Um, I had a conversation with Donovan about this particular issue. I actually, for the first time probably in this entire run, read it before he did, and was just so hung up on her being dosed that he was making some good comments that I think that he said, it would have been more compelling to have Cass wreak havoc and being the man bat. And the one time I think that there might be only 2 pages that we have the purple boxes, it's a lot of telling and not showing. She doesn't seek perfection, never has. She wants only to discover herself. Are these things true of Stephanie? I don't know. Some find inner truth through meditation, cutting through the noise to achieve it. Others seek a sounding board, friends to reflect, evaluate, advise. Sometimes, just sometimes, we only uncover who we truly are when we fall down a rabbit hole. So, this is like supposed to help Stephanie. I mean, how many times has Stephanie been reaching enlightenment in this particular book? There's a lot going on. I mean, the biggest takeaway I think from this particular issue is really how we're pushing this friendship, and I don't know if we're borderline a romantic relationship. I don't know if they're going to pull the trigger by 19 or on 19, but we're pushing something here. And again, yeah, we're just seeing like what is this? But I don't know. I just really didn't like this. Like, it's great that Cass is talking her down and, Cass talks about basically them. The fact that they're so close and that they know each other like no one else knows each other and they're there for each other and perhaps they are the 2 against the world. This is what calms Stephanie down. That's a really beautiful thing. But did it have to be Stephanie? Could it not have been someone else? The letter, that we got. It's just this weird tension that's going on. And also I feel like now we're just repeating ourselves. Mad Hatter, a question that I had just when I was reading Mad Hatter and what Mad Hatter was doing, it felt just like I was reading the Joker. His constant talk of chaos. I didn't understand his motivation. I don't think the Batgirls understood the motivation. I don't know if the writers knew what the motivation was. Like, what's the point of this? This is one issue actually. So I don't know that we even get there. Donovan says no, like this seems in line with this character. So then I would just have to do, I think, an evaluation of the differences between Joker and Mad Hatter and even Riddler and see like what are their modus what would it be? Would it be modi operandi? I guess so. What are their modi operandi? Um, and kind of what is the distinction between the 3 of them? Because I just felt like I was reading Joker, but with a Mad Hatter mask on him. Um, don't understand. I'm thinking my synopsis. I snarkily said, yeah, what is the point of this? I mean, that's a very Joker thing to do as well, just like getting ahead of somebody. And, are we getting closer with Officer Brooks before this story, this book is canceled? I have no idea. Is this going to come back to us? I don't know. Will I remember this Chekhov's gun? I have no idea. And this was a bit nuts, and just in the fact that she's got this Babs has this rifle and she is about to shoot down Stephanie because she's a monster. She's not a monster. She's our friend. Donovan does say it's a cool visual, which I do agree. That's a pretty awesome page right there, especially the top where she is outside, I guess the clock tower, or maybe just a cathedral. And then you also see through the scope Steph Bat and Cass riding her. But then we have again this section, just again we're pushing the romantic boundaries and riding on top of her and snuggling in that last panel there, staying with her for 12 hours. We're pushing something. Can we say this is still friendship? Yes, absolutely. But I think we have, and this is something that I've learned recently. I think we're borderline. We're not even borderline. We're in a queer platonic relationship, which I have learned recently. Queer platonic, and just I feel like you can, and I think this is true of like the podcast I was listening to. But if you attach basically queer to other words, it basically changes the original definition from like from a lens or a viewpoint of like heteronormativity to like, oh well, this has now we've like changed the perspective of it. So if platonic is this idea that there's no romance at all, and you're just friends kind of thing, then queer platonic is like you are friends, but it also like edges into and bleeds into other territories. Like you're very you could be close to other things. You never make that move, maybe necessarily, but it's also you have a distinct relationship or friendship than you do with other like platonic friends. For example, I would consider myself and Donovan to have a queer platonic relationship because we are very close, and I think there like could be hints of romance, but we'll never pull that trigger. I objectify him, and he knows that I objectify him both behind his back on this show and in person on social media. So that's like for me, I think a queer platonic relationship. So I think that Cass and Steph are in that queer platonic relationship as well, because we can interpret many of the scenes in here and the art that's been going around, the covers and things like that, as queer platonic because yes, they're close friends. Maybe this could be an innocent thing, but it's also like borderline that you step a little too far and we have a relationship. This was another part where Donovan said, show, don't tell, because you could have had a nice scene there of, oh my gosh, of Steph being asleep, and Cass staying by her side, but instead the purple boxes appear, and just the fact that Cass stayed with her, and as she slept, she dreamt of flying, and apparently all Steph needed to do was burn off some steam and fly around, which again, is that the character that we know? Is that a proper interpretation of the character? It's very, very interesting. So I don't know what the point of this story was really. Was it to deepen the relationship between Cass and Steph? And it feels like, if that was the point, then I guess there's maybe some success, but it feels like also we're just retrotting things. We know they're close. We know that they feel like they only have each other and they understand each other the best, and they've shared secrets and they have this history with parents that's toxic that they share too. So it's just like, well, we're doing that again, but we'll look at it in a different way by making Steph into a creature. The talking of about dreams, calming the beast down, riding on said beast, snuggling on her, standing vigil while she sleeps. I think this is all because yeah, she had that dream Cass talking about. I think we're just pushing the boundaries here. So I guess the point is to see this. I don't know why Steph is again the person that needs to have a run in and be the weak link and have issues. I feel like we should move on from that, but there we are. But other than that, yeah, I just don't understand. Like, what was the Mad Hatter really doing? What is the Mad Hatter doing anyways? Wasn't he out and about in other books? And like, I guess maybe he had to be brought in here, but did he really? And now we have 4 issues, and we're wasting our time on this where nothing really happened. Yeah, I don't know. So I didn't even give it a grade when I was originally writing this down. I really don't. I mean, it's like it feels like a 6. It feels not good. Okay. I said this felt like the weakest one to Donovan. He's like, I don't know if it's the weakest one. It's hard when you have to go through and think about 15 other issues. I mean, it doesn't seem very good. So I'll just give it a 6 out of 10 cup nudes. And one can only hope that the next 3 we reach some sort of conclusion, and also it's better than that kind of stuff. Okay. Anime watch list? No, though I did recently buy Fruits Basket Prelude, the movie, so I am interested in watching that once I get to that. I'm very busy. I am going to see the home opener of the North Carolina Courage versus the KC Current, and that's on Saturday. And then I've got some deadlines coming up. I am a bit ahead in both of my classes, which is nice, and it's mainly because the nuts class made a she opened up no the module that was okay. She opened up a module and there's a lot of work, but she said, "Don't worry, you have 2 weeks because you have spring break." And I thought that's not what spring break is. So I pounded all of that stuff out in like 2 days before spring break. And it was UVA's because I haven't had my work spring break yet. And then I was like a week ahead because she opened something else up. So I'm ahead in that one. I'm ahead in the other class, and I need to stay as much ahead as possible. But when they only open up a week at a time, it's kind of hard. So that my spring break, which is in a couple weeks, I don't have any work. But I really needed to because I've got some deadlines this weekend. So I dropped off my midterm assignment for my literacy class like the beginning of the week because I was done and with it probably last week. I just had to edit it, and then this one I was ahead to. I'm just waiting actually on my partner to send me her stuff because I have to comment on that, and that's due tonight. Who knows if she sent it in? All that to say, I'm seeing that home opener because I had to do some work and everything. Yes. Okay, so what's your recommendations? Let's do it. Reading. Okay. So, Romeo and Juliet. I think I already talked about that because it's coming out with Tom. I think I talked about Perspective, which was probably the last queer romance that I read. Oh, yes. Okay. Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney. I finished it. Shane and I have had some conversations via email about this because she very much loves this book. It was okay. Like, I feel like it's a good book. I didn't enjoy it as much as normal people, and it's mainly because I did not find any of the characters likable. However, I will say that these characters, while not likable, are realistic. I think they have real people flaws, which is, I think, something that Sally Rooney does well. Just that she does not make her characters glamorous and that like wish fulfillment thing. It's not. It's like normal everyday people who are making dumb decisions, things like that. The lead character, Frances, I liked her the least. At first, I liked Bobby the least. And then when Frances started having romantic relations with Nick, I really did not like Frances. Um, the ending, which was something that Shanna had told me that like you kind of have to look at a big picture because it's true. There are all these things that are going on, but once you reach the end and Francis like really opens up and is honest and genuine, you can then look back at all these other moments and like, okay, now I better understand what that character was doing. I had some fears when I was reading this because number one, Sally Rooney doesn't use quotes. It's just like these people are talking or almost indirect statement style. And so you just have to follow along. But the way that it's on paper, the things that Frances are saying is for saying, sorry, the things that Frances is saying are very harsh. Like at one point she says to Nick, you know, "Do you even have a personality?" And like she in the television series, you know, she jokes at that, but even he like makes a face. And I think to myself as I'm reading this, oh my gosh, you know, I say things similarly to that. Like I joke around and tease people. On paper, what I would say to people would seem really mean. And so like I wrote to a friend and I said, "Oh my gosh, I'm worried that I'm unkind like Frances." And she wrote back and said, "You are nothing like Frances." So hopefully that's true. But I think it's so I've been like trying to be more genuine to people and say like something kind that I mean, because I do like to joke around. I also joke that criticism is my love language. So I just need to be cautious. And I think it depends on the relationship that you have. If I look at it as the whole book as a love story between Bobby and Francis, I think that there's like a different angle to that because they do get together at the end. It's very confusing what that relationship is like. Like it took me probably 50 pages to realize that they weren't together, but they had been together, but they weren't currently. But once they get together, it's like, oh wow, there was like love. That's what I was queer platonic. There was love there that entire time. And so I visioned that differently, but I didn't like how the novel necessarily ended. And the final thing I will say is that I'm very appreciative of Frances having, which I do feel for her, endometriosis. Endometriosis, which is, I don't even, what was it? It's that, is it the uterine lining grows outside of, or something grows outside of the uterus? Now I've forgotten. I can always look this up as this is happening. But some people just describe it as like really intense period pain, which is, let's see what this is, a disorder in which the tissue, there you go. I was right. That normally lines the uterus grows outside of it. Oy, my word. So it is, and I had heard someone recently talk about this, Leah Williamson, who is captain of the England Lionesses. She is um backline of the Arsenal. And she was saying how she has endometriosis and she like described it as like really bad period pain. And then when you watch this, well, when you read it and then when you also see the show, you're like, oh my gosh, it's really bad. And I have my times that it's not good. I am usually popping the suggested 24-hour amount of ibuprofen each time I have my period, because I do have cramps. I think there's only once or twice, and once I would say is the worst. And I remember what I was doing. I was in a school. It was probably like 10, 11 at night. We were working on a project. This was second year, second semester. I can imagine where my desk was. I was working on topography and cutting stuff up and putting together a model. And I thought I was going to pass out. I thought I was going to throw up and pass out and had to like, I think I spent a long time in the bathroom. So if that's like, that was one time. That was one time. And just to think that this happens to somebody every month is just nuts. But I applaud Sally Rooney for having a character, because I don't think I've ever seen a character that, I mean, I've brought up periods a lot, and Tom has talked about them with me as well, but I don't think I've ever seen a character with endometriosis, and just bringing, I think, attention to that, and that this is a real thing that people have to deal with. And seeing that from Francis and not having that be dramatized at all, but and then thinking about Leah Williamson, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, how could you be on a pitch and do that?" Because just because you have your period doesn't mean that you are not gonna play a game. So that's just nuts to me, but I'm appreciative that we do that. So yeah, look that up because if we're not already doing something, there we go. Lucky and Lace, a queer romance by Melissa Braden. I actually recommend this because she actually had in her beginning how like this is a character she's not written before, because someone like got out of prison the first chapter, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is a different character. It was also nice because they got together, and normally there's like a conflict and they completely separate, and then you're like waiting until the very end when they come together. But they actually have just like a couple little skirmishes, I'll call them, but they're together the entire time. They say I love you, they get married. It's like, this is what I like to see, because I like to see characters like get together, and then what is the after of that. And this is the first time that I think I've seen that. And then I also read The Women of Troy by Pat Barker, which is the sequel to Silence of the Women, I think it was called. So basically, post Trojan War, there's just waiting to leave and go home. And then I'm nearly finished with The Day and the Death of Joe Egg by Peter Nichols, which is a play. And it was something that I had spotted at the Broadway Museum. I was just like, this is such a compelling and odd title. And looked up what it was about, and I was like, oh my gosh, this actually seems very interesting. But I've only read one act, so I'll probably finish that tomorrow. I'm sure that I have time. So I think that's it. So yes, I recommend Conversations with Friends. I recommend, it was interesting watching it too. Those adaptations are, I would say, like 90% accurate to the source material, like taking conversations literally from the book. And it's interesting to see the affect of the characters, because when you're reading these harsh things that Frances is saying, it's like, how is she actually presenting it? And of course that's artist interpretation. But I think it's also the relationship between her and Nick, I think, is a little more romanticized in the adaptation than it is in the book, because they do have some rows, and he also says some critical things to her, but they don't really present him that way in the TV show. But yeah, recommend it. I think I would just recommend, I think, Normal People first personally, but I know that Sheena really loves Conversations with Friends. Oh, and I also want to say that the author, I feel like I see the author in her characters. Sheena sent me an article, I think, for the New Yorker on Sally Rooney. I'm like, oh yeah, that's she's part Frances, part Marianne. I also kind of worry about her. The self-harm, I think, really only happened in that in Conversation with Friends. So that's like a one-off. But in both Normal People and Conversations with Friends, there's weird, I'm gonna say a weird moment, because it feels like it's very uncomfortable for, I think, the reader. I think it's intentional for that, as well as the male member of the pelvic affiliation. But the woman is saying, like, you can do whatever you want with me, do you want to hit me? And the other guy is saying, or the guy is saying, like, I don't think I would like that. Makes me feel uncomfortable. And this happened 2 out of 2 times, and so I just wonder, like, why would you write that? Because one is like, okay, that's a weird quirk. Let's look at what this character is going through. But then 2 times is like, okay, we've now copied and pasted. Situation has changed a bit, but let's examine this. And so maybe I worry a bit about Sally Rooney and some things that she may be going through. Okay, well, remember, you can send any questions or comments to Batgirl to Oracle@gmail.com. Like the show on Facebook or follow it on Twitter @Batgirl Oracle, and subscribe to the show on YouTube for an uncut version where I occasionally do flub up that last line and other lines as well. Subscribe to the show. Nope. See, there you go. Follow the Batman Universe on Facebook and Twitter as well, and support the Batman Universe by subscribing to Patreon. Once again, thanks to Mile High Comics for sponsoring Batgirl the Oracle, the Barbara Gordon podcast. And next time we're going to see, oh my gosh, Stephanie Brown as Robin. Whoa. Whoa. I bet that's going to last a while. You know what I'm saying? But until then, fly on, Babs lovers.